Skateboarding games are perhaps the most accessible sports games around, and I can't really think of any other sports game where it pulls in both the casual and hardcore audiences at the same time. You know, people who aren't really a fan of the sport, who've never skated in their life like myself. And these days, the skateboarding genre has all but disappeared from modern gaming. You know, we got phenomenal remakes of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, 1 and 2 that is, but seemingly a 3 and 4 sequel bundle to that just doesn't seem to be happening. And EA has promised us this triumphant return to the Skate franchise, but after years of development, we are still waiting for that. And I must admit that I have just lost any interest in it whatsoever after hearing that it was going towards a live service model. So as it just happens, you guys know I'm working my way through my 7th gen backlog at the moment, and today I'm discussing the very first Skate game, which took myself and many others by complete surprise at the time, and it really cemented itself as a more gritty, strategic take on the arcade skateboarding genre, and all this during the decline of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater franchise. It just couldn't have come out at a better time, and I recall that when I played the original Skate, I was just blown away by the graphical showcase on display here. The camera placement was more or less on the floor the entire time, and while you're playing, there was this sort of weightiness to the movement, the controls. You know, it still felt like an arcade skateboarding game, but physics, momentum, weight, and your character just really played an important role in sort of landing certain maneuvers. Whereas in Tony Hawk, you could kind of grind on rails at 50 miles an hour and do these insane kickflips, these crazy stunts in the air, Skate really put an emphasis on realistic character movement, and your speed wasn't just nominal, it really determined which tricks you could muster at the time, and the entire game just felt different. It felt like a true evolution coming from the Pro Skater franchise, and really defined itself as being sort of a next generation skateboarding game. Now this initial game sets a solid foundation, and what we have here is sort of a semi-open world structure that recreates a realistic looking environment and asks you basically to decide how you want to use this setting to best achieve your skating desires. Character customization is also in here, and there's just a flair and style to all of this that feels very true to like the underground vibe of skateboarding as a sport. The core identity of Skate, however, lies in its control scheme. Tony Hawk really relied on face buttons during certain tricks, along with your analog stick to kind of balance out your skater during grinds or hangs and whatnot. And Skate asks you to use the analog stick instead to flick and twist your skateboard into various tricks and jumps. It's quite incredible, and when you imagine like the pitch for this game, right, the concept of someone going in and saying, yeah, we're going to tie nearly everything to a single analog stick, and depending on the rotation, the placement, the speed of the movement of the stick itself, we'll convert that into specific tricks, then use an alternative stick to sort of control your character movement at the same time. Like, I just imagine something like that was a bit confusing when someone was trying to sort of convey how the game would control. But the thing is, once you start playing it, it just makes so much sense. It really gives this game a unique energy and allows for more granular options, as well as freeing up the face buttons for just more interactable choices. Now, this isn't to say that everything works perfectly though, and I must admit that there were a few times where I had to sort of consistently redo certain maneuvers, because when you're kind of barreling down a hill at intense speed and you're trying to do a certain trick, sometimes that split hair of a second and sort of the anxiety that comes with the timing of it all can lead you to not really getting a certain move out right, or simply moving the analog stick with too much force, causing a different trick to come out entirely. And I think it's really all by design here, and honestly, this is a game that just rewards you the more time you play with it. It feels like this sort of natural sense of progression, because the more time you allocate to playing the game, the more stuff you are able to do and feel confident in yourself doing. And as we always do, let's take a look at the box art for the original Skate on Xbox 360. I like the simplicity of the cover art here. You know, it is what it is. It doesn't try to make any sort of wild expectations or impressions, and I really appreciate that. On the back here, it says your lines, your styles. It shows a couple of screenshots, and again, shows a very realistic looking game for the time. This game just had a certain style and flair to it all. So if we take a look at the game disc here, I have a really nice copy of the disc itself. It shows basically the underside of the skateboard, and yeah, the Series X had no problem reading that. Now, I have a manual here for the game, and it's pretty simplistic. It's black and white, which I think kind of goes with the overall style of the casing and everything like that, but it doesn't go into too much detail. It's pretty bare bones, to be honest. So there's that. Now, we also have this interesting sort of advertisement here where you can download a mobile game for Skate, which was kind of interesting. So you could text it, and I guess you get these perks, and yeah, there's a look at the mobile game down there. Just really interesting looking back at the time frame that was and those phones. So that's always sort of fun to see. Anyway, yeah, cool look at the box art for Skate. Again, I like the simplicity of it and the style and everything like that. Now let's discuss the visuals at this time. Skate was a very forward-looking game for its day, and what we're watching here is the Xbox 360 code being played on a Series X via backwards compatibility. Due to this game's operating at an unlocked frame rate, Skate can now be enjoyed on Series X in a buttery smooth 60 frames per second, and all this just adds to the responsiveness of the controls. It just feels great to play today. Resolution still sticks to the standard 360 presentation, and I think that the game still holds up quite well visually. You have a lot of post-processing effects in here. The idea surrounding the camera placement is to sort of give the impression that it's a handheld camera and someone's kind of following you and recording you the entire way you're playing the game. So because of that, you have some nice effects like depth of field, there's bloom, there's a vignette filter on the entire way as you're playing, and I think that this game just looks really unique in motion and even improved now because of the added frame rate stability. And apparently the PS3 version back in the day suffered from some early PS3 360 cross-platform development where it was just a more buggy, less pretty, and worse performing game on that system. To be honest, I first played this on PS3 back in the day, and the little I remember of sort of my 14-year-old self playing it back then, I was still very much able to enjoy the game, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that here, that apparently it's not a really good port if you were to go back and play it today. Now, coupling the visuals here is a very nice set of licensed music. I mean, what would a skateboarding game be without that? You have just a great assortment of songs here, all the nice alternative rock bands and stuff that was just so popular during the mid-2000s, and listening to some of these tracks definitely brought me back to an earlier time in my life. And I have to say that the audio design outside of the soundtrack is also pretty nice. Everything is sort of filtered through this type of video recording effect because, again, the idea is that someone's recording you as you're playing the game, and that means that the audio can sound a bit stylized at times because of that, but I think it actually all turns okay out in the end, and I had no problem with the audio and the quality of it. It all sounded great on my end. So in closing here, returning to Skate today, all these years later, was just a lot of fun. I got used to the controls pretty quickly. It's a very accessible game in that it's easy to understand what they were going for. But at the same time, I did have some trouble getting some moves to come out. And while I didn't dedicate a large amount of hours on my second playthrough here, it was fun to sort of replay the game, and it brought back memories of just a much more simpler time in my life. As I also said before, I just really have no interest in the new Skate game since it was announced as a live service project. But a good game is still a good game regardless of what it entails. So I guess I'll see what EA has in store for us when they finally decide to show us the game, I guess. Anyways, I certainly appreciate you all watching this video. Let me know if you played the original Skate back in the day or if you picked up the game much later on. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of it. And we'll talk soon. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.